So you want to own a Golden Age privateer ship. You stand on the quarterdeck of a sleek, two-masted frigate. Salt spray stings your face. The air smells of oakum, wet cordage, and black powder. Your 30 gun ports are open, cannons run out. Across the turquoise water of the Caribbean, a heavy Spanish galleon drops its colors. Gold doubloons, silver ingots, and chests of silk are about to be hoisted onto your deck. You are a sovereign predator of the high seas, sanctioned by the crown to print your own wealth. One number ruins the picture. In 1670, outfitting a modest 100-ton privateer frigate in Port Royal cost over £3,000 before the ship ever cast off its mooring lines. For a skilled London shipwright earning 2 shillings and 6 pence a day, that single upfront bill represented more than 80 years of continuous back-breaking labor. The cannon was never the business. The contract was. Let's build a privateer enterprise from scratch and break down the real ledgers. By the end of this, you will see the exact costs required to clear the harbor, the hidden legal traps designed to strip their profits, and why most men who bought warships ended up in a debtor's prison, while the men who stayed on land quietly ran the world. When most people think of privateers, they imagine pirates with a thin veneer of respectability. Men like Francis Drake, Henry Morgan, or William Kidd, sailing under a national flag, plundering enemy trade routes, and splitting millions in gold coins on a remote tropical beach. It sounds like unchecked lawlessness. Economically, it was the exact opposite. A privateer was not a pirate ship. A privateer was a floating, joint-stock venture capital enterprise. During the 17th century, European empires, England, France, Spain, and the Dutch Republic, were locked in perpetual global warfare. But standing navies were catastrophically expensive. Building, manning, and feeding a fleet of royal warships could drain an entire national treasury in a single season. So, governments outsourced naval warfare to the private market. They issued a legal document called a letter of marque. This piece of parchment granted a private ship owner the legal right to attack and capture foreign merchant vessels during wartime. If a pirate captured a ship, it was illegal robbery punishable by hanging. If a privateer captured the exact same ship under a valid letter of marque, it was a legal asset seizure known as a prize. That single piece of paper changed the financial structure. To track how this business actually operated, we do not have to guess. We can look directly at surviving legal documents, specifically the 1670 Port Royal Vice-Admiralty Court prize ledgers from Jamaica. These ledgers record the precise accounts of privateering fleets operating in the Caribbean, documenting the exact line-item costs, auction prices, court taxes, and crew payouts for ships like the frigate Satisfaction. These records reveal a surprising truth. The goal of a privateer owner was not maritime conquest. The goal was navigating a legal supply chain designed to turn foreign timber and cargo into liquidated cash. Before you can capture a single coin, you must raise the capital. And the capital requirements for a privateer were staggering compared to an ordinary merchant vessel. A standard merchant ship was built for cargo volume. It had a broad hull, a small crew, and just enough light cannons to scare off small boats. A privateer was built for speed and violence. It needed a narrow, streamlined hull to overhaul fast targets. It needed reinforced oak decks to support heavy iron cannons. And most importantly, it needed a massive crew. Not to sail the ship, but to fight, board, and man the captured prize vessels you hope to send home. A merchant ship of 100 tons might sail with a crew of 12 men. A privateer frigate of the exact same size carried up to 120 men packed shoulder to shoulder below decks. Every single one of those men had to be fed. According to surviving port accounts, outfitting a 100-ton privateer for a 6-month cruise required astronomical expenditure. First came the ship itself. Purchasing a used, ocean-worthy vessel cost around £1,200. Refitting the hull with heavy timber bracing and cutting extra gun ports added another £400. Then came the artillery. 12 4-pounder iron cannons alongside swivel guns, small arms, cutlasses, and iron long pikes added £500 to the bill. Then came the consumables. Black powder and iron round shot cost £150. Salt beef, hardtack biscuit, dried peas, butter, and barrels of rum for 100 men over 6 months cost another £600. Add in oakum caulking, spare sails, anchors, and the high-priced legal fees required to secure the letter of marque from the local governor, and your total startup capital reached roughly £3,100. That sounds like a massive sum. It was. To put that number in perspective, £3,100 represented more than 80 years of wages for a skilled English shipwright or carpenter. Few individuals could afford that level of risk alone, so privateer ownership was almost always syndicated. Syndicate investors bought fractional shares in the vessel, sixteenths, eighths, or quarters. If the ship sank, your loss was capped at your share. If the ship captured a treasure ship, your return was proportional to your equity. It looked like a perfect financial engine. But you still had to solve the biggest operational problem in the maritime world. How do you pay a crew of 100 heavily armed men when you have zero guaranteed revenue? If you paid your crew a fixed daily wage, your enterprise would go bankrupt before you ever sighted an enemy sail. 6 months of wages for 100 men would add hundreds of pounds to your fixed costs, regardless of whether you caught a valuable ship or chased empty horizon for half a year. So privateer owners invented a radical corporate incentive structure. It was called no purchase, no pay. The crew received zero base salary, not a single penny. Instead, every man on board signed a set of formal legal contracts called Articles of Agreement. These articles converted the entire crew from salaried wage labor into equity partners in the voyage. The division of potential plunder was mapped out in ruthless detail before the anchor was weighed. Typically, the ship owners who financed the vessel took 50% of the net value of all captured prize ships. The remaining 50% was split among the captain and crew according to a strict share hierarchy. The captain might receive 6 to 12 shares. The chief mate and master gunner received 2 or 3 shares. Skilled seamen received 1 full share. Raw landsmen or boys received half a share. This alignment of incentives was powerful. If the crew caught nothing, they earned nothing, protecting the owners from a wage bill. If the crew caught a massive prize, everyone on board became rich overnight. Crucially, the Articles of Agreement also included a complex system of internal disability insurance. Privateering was brutal, bloody work. Cannon fire produced splinter showers that tore human flesh to ribbons. To keep men willing to charge across the blood-slicked deck of an enemy ship, the owners established fixed financial payouts for combat injuries, deducted directly from the total prize money before any general distribution took place. According to the 1670 Vice-Admiralty ledgers in Jamaica, the compensation rates were remarkably standardized. Losing an eye paid 100 pieces of 8. Losing an arm below the elbow paid 500 pieces of 8. Losing a right arm entirely paid 600 pieces of 8, or 6 enslaved workers if cash was scarce. It was cold, mathematical risk management. Every limb had a price tag explicitly written into the corporate ledger. This incentive structure created a fiercely motivated workforce, but it also created a terrifying secondary pressure for the ship owner. When you put 100 armed men on a ship under a no-purchase, no-pay contract, time is your absolute enemy. Every week spent sailing without spotting a target burns through salt beef and fresh water. If weeks turn into months with no profits, the crew does not simply get discouraged, they get desperate. And on a warship packed with hungry, armed men who realize their contract is yielding zero return, the line between legal privateering and illegal piracy dissolves completely. Now, let's assume your privateer frigate gets lucky. 3 months into the cruise, off the coast of Hispaniola, your lookout spots a slow-moving Spanish merchant vessel riding low in the water. You clear for action, run out your broadside cannons, fire a warning shot across her bow, and send the boarding party over her rail. The Spanish captain surrenders without a fight. Below decks, you find 500 barrels of refined sugar, 20 tons of dyewood, and 10,000 silver pieces of 8. The crew cheers. The captain raises a cup of rum. You have captured a prize worth thousands of pounds. You think you are rich. That is the exact moment the legal trap snaps shut. You cannot simply open the wooden chests, hand out the silver coins to your sailors, and sell the sugar to the highest bidder in the nearest bay. If you do that, you have committed the capital crime of piracy under English law. To turn a captured ship into legal wealth, you must bring that ship intact into an official port of entry with a Vice-Admiralty Court. This is where the third phase of the privateering chain reaction begins: legal condemnation. The moment your prize anchors in Port Royal, the Vice-Admiralty Court seizes the vessel and locks the cargo hatches under official wax seals. The 1670 Port Royal Vice-Admiralty ledgers show a grinding, bureaucratic process that could take months to resolve. First, court officials march aboard to inspect the prize. They seize the ship's paper logbooks, search the captain's cabin for letters, and subject the captured crew to formal legal depositions. Why? Because the court must verify three critical legal conditions. Was the captured vessel truly an enemy ship, or was it a neutral Dutch or English vessel carrying friendly cargo? Was your letter of marque valid and unexpired on the exact day of the capture? And did your crew refrain from embezzling cargo before the court arrived? If the prize was captured illegally or from a neutral power, the Vice-Admiralty Court will order the ship restored to its original owners, leaving you with zero profit and a massive bill for court costs. Even if the vessel is legally condemned as a valid prize, the government takes its bite first. Before the ship owner or crew receives a single copper coin, the Vice-Admiralty Court extracts state taxes and administrative fees directly from the gross valuation. First, the Crown takes its sovereign cut, typically 10% of the total gross value. Second, the Lord High Admiral takes a separate 10% fee for issuing the wartime authority. Third, the Vice-Admiralty Court judge, register, and marshal deduct their personal legal fees, appraisal costs, and warehouse rental charges. Then come the customs taxes on the cargo itself. If you captured a ship full of French wine or Spanish sugar, you must pay full imperial import duties before that cargo can be legally landed and sold at public auction. By the time the government, the court, the lawyers, and the customs officials finish carving up your prize, 20 to 30% of the vessel's total gross value has vanished into state coffers. And while you wait weeks or months for the Vice-Admiralty Court to issue its final decree, your captured cargo is sitting in a hot tropical warehouse. Sugar rots, wine turns to vinegar, grain gets eaten by weevils. Dynamic market prices collapse while parchment documents move slowly across a judge's desk. The cannon got you the ship. The contract and the court determined whether you survived the victory. To see how that domino effect played out in the real world, we look at one of the most famous privateering disasters in history, the voyage of Captain William Kidd and the Adventure Galley. In 1695, William Kidd was a respected, wealthy New York ship captain. He was approached by an elite syndicate of English investors, including the Earl of Bellamont and 4 sitting members of the British cabinet, including the Lord High Chancellor of England. The business plan was ambitious. The syndicate invested over £6,000 to custom build the Adventure Galley, a state-of-the-art 287-ton vessel fitted with 30 cannons and oars for rowing in dead calms. Kidd received a royal commission under the Great Seal of England. His mandate was twofold: capture French merchant ships and hunt down illegal pirates operating in the Indian Ocean. It looked like an unbeatable venture. The political backing was absolute. The ship was superior to anything on the water. The capital was secured. Then the chain reaction began. First came operational delays. While sailing down the Thames River in 1696, Kidd failed to salute a Royal Navy warship. The Navy captain was insulted and promptly impressed most of Kidd's hand-picked crew into royal service, forcing Kidd to recruit leftover, desperate sailors in New York under a strict no-purchase, no-pay contract. Second came a lack of targets. Kidd sailed to the Indian Ocean and searched for French merchant ships for months. He found nothing. The ship's victualling stores rotted in the tropical heat. The crew, working without wages under their share contract, grew increasingly rebellious. Kidd was burning through fixed costs while generating zero gross prize revenue. Then came the turning point. Desperate to prevent a mutiny, Kidd struck a heavy merchant vessel called the Quedagh Merchant in 1698. The ship was carrying a fortune in silks, muslins, sugar, and gold worth over £70,000. It seemed like the ultimate privateering score. It was a fatal mistake. The Quedagh Merchant was an Armenian-owned ship, but it was commanded by an English captain and carried trade passes issued by the French East India Company. Legally, it was a messy gray area. Politically, it was a nightmare. The political climate in London had shifted while Kidd was at sea. His high-ranking syndicate investors were facing severe political attacks from rival politicians who accused them of sponsoring piracy. To protect their own positions, Kidd's powerful backers abandoned him completely. The government declared William Kidd an illegal pirate. When Kidd sailed to the Caribbean to clear his name and liquidate his prize cargo, his ship was seized, his assets were confiscated, and he was brought to London in chains. In 1701, William Kidd was tried at the Old Bailey, found guilty of murder and piracy, and hanged at Execution Dock. His body was dipped in tar and suspended in an iron cage over the Thames River as a warning to other mariners. The vessel had failed, the legal framework had reversed, the syndicate had erased its risk, and the captain took the full force of the executioner's rope. So if privateering was a razor-thin legal gamble that frequently ended in financial ruin or execution, why did anyone pursue it? The answer lies in the few men who understood how to use privateering as a stepping stone to something far more lucrative. Consider the life of Sir Henry Morgan. Henry Morgan did not start as a wealthy English aristocrat. He arrived in the Caribbean as a young, landless officer. During the 1660s, he rose through the privateering ranks in Port Royal, eventually commanding massive fleets of privateer frigates under legal commissions issued by the governor of Jamaica, Sir Thomas Modiford. Morgan led famous bloody raids against Spanish strongholds at Puerto Príncipe, Portobello, and Panama City. His privateer crews captured hundreds of thousands of pieces of eight and plunder. Most privateer sailors who received their share payouts spent their money immediately. They filled the taverns of Port Royal, buying rum, gambling, and throwing silver coins into the streets until their pockets were empty. Within weeks, those sailors were broke and forced to sign on to another privateer ship under another no-purchase, no-pay contract. Morgan did the exact opposite. Morgan understood that privateering plunder was low-quality, volatile capital. You could lose it in a single shipwreck or court dispute. So he systematically converted his volatile prize money into hard, permanent real estate assets. Using his share of the Panama profits, which brought him thousands of pounds, Morgan purchased thousands of acres of prime agricultural land in the Jamaican interior. He imported enslaved labor and built massive automated sugar plantations, including his famous estate at Lanrumney. In 1674, Morgan bought 2,000 acres of prime Jamaican sugarland for roughly £2,000, an amount equal to more than 52 years of labor for a skilled English shipwright. Sugar was not a high-risk gamble. Sugar was a high-margin, recurring revenue commodity, backed by state trade monopolies. Then, Morgan converted his financial assets into political power. He cultivated relationships with the Jamaican merchant class and the English crown, eventually securing an appointment as the lieutenant governor of Jamaica and the senior judge of the Vice-Admiralty Court, the very court that judged privateer prizes. Henry Morgan did not get rich from owning a warship. He got rich by using the warship to buy the island. When Morgan died peacefully in his bed in 1688, he was not a hunted pirate or a bankrupt privateer captain. He was one of the wealthiest sugar planters in the West Indies, a high-ranking state official, and a major lender who held the mortgages of the very merchants who supplied the privateering fleet. The men who stayed on the water died of yellow fever or drowned in storms. The man who converted water into land died a millionaire. Which brings us back to where we started. When you look at a Golden Age privateer ship from the outside, it looks like the ultimate weapon of individual freedom. A fast frigate slicing through blue water, heavy iron cannons bristling from the wooden hull, answering to no king but the wind and the horizon. Underneath the surface, it was something entirely different. A privateer was a complex legal derivative designed by states to wage cheap maritime war, and by land-based investors to shift operational risk onto desperate men. It was a business where the ship was a capital liability. The crew was an equity partner bearing all the downside. The government took 30% off the top before you were paid, and the Vice-Admiralty Court controlled the doorway to actual liquidity. If you were a sailor on board, you were trading your limbs for the statistical illusion wealth. If you were a captain, you were one legal technicality away from an iron cage on the Thames. And if you were a smart investor, you knew that the gold coins on the deck were just a temporary phase of the asset cycle. The real business was converting those coins into sugarcane, land, and legal authority before the next storm sank the fleet. You thought you were buying a warship to conquer the high seas. What you were really buying was a corporate share in an admiralty lawsuit. Because, in the golden age of privateering, just like today, the cannon was never the business. The contract was.